Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. A great show for you tonight. Dr. Waleed Phares, Senator Rand Paul, Nina Shea, and Dr. Meg Meeker are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. I read almost all of them, only the nice ones. Lots to cover this evening, but first some news from the world over. On Tuesday evening, Iran launched a retaliatory strike on 2 U.S.-occupied bases in Iraq. No U.S. forces were injured or killed. The attack came after the death of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani last week. Soleimani was commander of the Quds Force, which the Trump administration designated as a terrorist organization. He helped direct wars in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, and is blamed for the deaths of hundreds, if not thousands, of U.S. service members. On Wednesday, following the attacks by Iran, President Trump addressed the American people and opened his remarks by issuing this stark promise.
As long as I'm president of the United States, Iran will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon.
Joining me now to discuss all of this is national security and foreign policy expert Dr. Waleed Phares. Thanks for joining us again, Waleed.
Thank you for having me.
I want to begin and play a bit more of the president's speech on Wednesday. In it, he made clear that he does not want war with Iran. However, Iran will face punishments from the U.S. should they not change their ways. Listen.
As we continue to evaluate options in response to Iranian aggression, the United States will immediately impose additional punishing economic sanctions on the Iranian regime. These powerful sanctions will remain until Iran changes its behavior.
The Iranians are already suffering economically, Waleed. I know people in the region. They have family there. Give us a sense of what its life is like in Iran and what might be the impact of additional sanctions.
There are, two lives in Iran. The life of the people and the life of the regime. The regime has cash, including the $150 billion, $1.5 billion in cash, more support coming from different quarters of the radical side in the Middle East. And the regular people, they have very, very bad economics, which explains why over the past 3 months, 90 days, there were those demonstrations. They were all about socioeconomics, basically.
No, I mean, the wages are down by half. Unemployment is up 67%. I mean, it's a maddening basket case there. Now, as you mentioned, we saw those uprisings in November, people taking to the streets and marching against the government, the protest movement reinvigorated. But like the Obama administration, did the Trump administration miss an opportunity to connect with that resistance within Iran?
Not at all. During the Obama administration, the first months of the Obama administration, in June of 2009, President Obama delivered a speech, sent a letter to the Grand Ayatollah, basically telling him, I'm not going to meddle. Therefore, telling the people, don't count on us, not even in a tweet. I'm not sure if there were tweets at the time by the president. But anyway, the Trump administration, First Secretary Pompeo, and of course the president, other officials, made it very clear that we stand with the people of Iran. And with time, we were ready to work with the immigrants first and with the NGOs and give them some air coverage, broadcast coverage. Who paid attention to that? Who noticed this? Soleimani, the Quds Force, the militias. So they were very upset that we were standing with their people, and they went big time going against these demonstrators, killed up to 1,200 people. And they did something else, Raymond. The militias under Soleimani started to attack us in Iraq. That explains how this whole thing began.
Wow. Yes. Now, I have not heard that. In all this week's coverage, and we were together on the night when Soleimani went down. Now, we saw video, and I want to show people this. This is video of the funeral of Soleimani. Thousands of people in attendance. You see them weeping and jamming the streets. I heard commentators, my old pal Chris Matthews, saying that this was a beloved hero. Another commentator said he was the Martin Luther King of Iran, Soleimani was. Is this AstroTurf or is this authentic mourning? Because we know the Iranians can jam the streets with a crowd.
You know, he was beloved by whom? By the members of the Revolutionary Guard, by their families, by the party that supports the regime. It reminded me of the moments when after Heydrich was killed, by the Czech resistance in World War II. And he was the Nazi commander, occupier of Czech Republic and other parts of Europe. And back in Berlin at the time, they had a huge ceremony for him, and he was certainly beloved by the Nazis. That could be the only comparison I could think of.
Yeah, great. Okay, after Iran launched these strikes at U.S. bases, Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif sent out this tweet. Iran took and concluded proportionate measures in self-defense under Article 51 of UN Charter, targeting base from which cowardly armed attack against our citizens and senior officials were launched. We do not seek escalation or war, but will defend ourselves against any aggression. It's become clear, Waleed, that Iran warned Iraq in the lead up to these missile attacks or rocket attacks, and they let the U.S. bases know what was about to happen, and there were no U.S. personnel on site. My question, was this simply to save face for the mullahs and the Iranian regime?
This, Raymond, was one of the most controlled operations by the Iranian regime so that they don't clash with the United States. They were shelling.
Targeted missile strikes.
Targeted missiles, messaging the United States, we're not really attacking you, and telling their public inside Iran that we have destroyed all the bases. Because the Iranian leadership now is disoriented after what has happened. They have been told by their own advisors and potentially advisors from the West, maybe here, that this administration is not going to respond to you. They did not respond to the downing of that drone a few months ago over Gulf air or space.
Right.
So they concluded, oh, we could attack at will. The Americans will pack and leave. This is a presidential campaign year, so nothing's going to happen. They were surprised by the orders given by the president and by his own position, that no, we're not going to allow you to cross the red line.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani also tweeted out a message after the strikes. This was a bit different in tone from Zarif's. He wrote, General Soleimani fought heroically against ISIS, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, et al. If it weren't for his war on terror, European capitals would be in great danger now. Our final answer to his assassination will be to kick all U.S. forces out of the region. Your thoughts on this response and how much of a loss is Soleimani to that Iranian regime?
Let me tell you that these kind of statements made by the Iranians have some appeal in the West, in Europe, and here. Oh, the Iranians have been fighting against the al-Qaeda and, of course, against al-Nusra. The only comparison I can think of, the Allies were fighting the Nazis, the Soviets were fighting the Nazis. But once the Nazis collapsed, what did the Soviets do? Occupy half of Europe. What did Stalin do? Kill millions and millions of people. So it doesn't really sound and look like they are our allies.
What about these militias? Soleimani had his finger on all of these militia groups spread throughout the Middle East, in Syria, in Lebanon, all over the Middle East. What happens to them now? We have his successor stepping into the breach. Does he have the same vision and control over these wandering militias?
He has the same vision, no doubt about it. He was his deputy for all these years. He has the same intelligence. He has the connections with the bureaucratic connection with all these militias. What he doesn't have is basically the experience. He doesn't have the trust of the leadership. And he doesn't have actually the respect of these militias because he never appeared in the battlefield or most of the battlefields. It's going to take time for the Iran regime to produce Soleimani too. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be overnight. This is the time for the United States and its allies and the peoples of the region to break through.
Now, you've talked about engaging the Iranians in dialogue. It seems that's what the president made overtures to earlier this week. How does that happen? What does that look like? What might the preconditions be?
That's the biggest question, diplomatic question of the day, of the week, I'd say maybe of the year. Look, first of all, we need to engage with the Iranian people. We need to talk to the demonstrators, their representation, so on and so forth. But yes, and don't be surprised, I'm not against talking to the Iranian government, Iranian regime. But we need to talk to them with a list of conditions. First of all, we want you to withdraw your Iranian militias from these 4 Arab countries. We want you not to buy further more missiles. We want you to commit not to deploy nuclear weapons, buy nuclear weapons, build nuclear weapons. If they commit to those, this is even beyond Gorbachev. We would have reformed them against their own will. I don't think they're going to do it. But yes, we should always say we are ready to speak, but know exactly what we're doing.
And you think the sanctions have softened them up to make them more willing to come to the table? Or Has it repelled them from that?
Not at all. The sanctions have put so much pressure on them. They were not knowing what they were doing. That's why they attacked the United States. That's why they repressed so badly the people in Iran. And once you put that much pressure on the regime, you could expect anything from their side.
There was a vote in the Iraqi parliament to expel the troops of the United States. How credible was that? And was that just a show of support to Iran for the moment? Because there are many of the political parties are Shia and therefore aligned with the Iranian regime.
Well, let me give you the actual news.
Okay.
The parliamentary group that made the vote are the political representatives of the militias led by Soleimani. So these are the Soleimani guys and girls. What happened is very important for the public here to understand is that Iraq is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious country. So in order to have a national dimension for any decision, you have to have all of them. What has happened? Arab Sunni have withdrawn, Kurds have withdrawn, minorities have withdrawn. So now those who have voted for this are the pro-Iranian Shia. Let me add one thing. A majority of Shia youth are demonstrating against these militias. This is no representation of the real Iraq.
You talked about the diversity in Iraq. The Christian community has been so destroyed, scattered. Most of them, what remains, is in north of Erbil in the Nineveh Plain.
Yeah.
They are very concerned about what they're seeing. You see a ray of hope in all this chaos of the moment. What is it?
We are in the middle of a position where the U.S. can actually make things happen for them.
The U.S. can?
The U.S. now.
In what way?
In what way? Because the militias now are aggressive against the U.S. In the past, we didn't want to antagonize the militias. All we can do right now is pressure those militias to get out of the Nineveh Valley and then tell the Kurds to help the Christians to come down into the Nineveh Valley, and we are there to protect them. Because President said we're not leaving soon before making sure that behind us there is no ISIS and no Iranian militias. This is the window for these minorities, Yazidi and Christians, to be brought back to their villages and protected.
Okay, there was a big meeting this week. Putin went to Syria. He met with al-Assad. Your thoughts on that meeting and the role of Russia and China in this tension between Iran and the United States?
Look, what Putin wants basically is to maintain his little garden, which is in western Syria, and continue to have a protection of Assad. We understand that these are geopolitics. We're not even challenging this at this point in time. But the president made a very important call during his press release. He addressed the Russians and the Chinese, and he told them, let's talk about our joint interest against the jihadists. Both of you are challenged by the jihadists. But you don't have to have the special relationship with an Iranian regime, which is actually countered by its own population. Join us, cut off with the Iranian regime, put pressure on the Iranian regime, and we'll solve the issues in the Middle East.
So you weren't concerned then about that Putin-al-Assad meeting?
If we are clear about what we're doing in the Middle East, if we are not planning on cutting another deal with the mullah, and letting our friends down, I'm not concerned about anything. The president could speak with his administration and with the support of Congress, I hope, with anybody he wants, but we need to know what we want. It's the same for the Iranians. I would go to Tehran and speak with them or some other city and tell them this is exactly what we want. So we should not be afraid of speaking, but we should be very clear about what we should be speaking.
What did you make of the American press coverage of the Iranian foreign minister this past week, where he said, we're abiding by international law. We don't have any civilians on our hit list. We don't even have a hit list. And
we don't have civilians.
Yeah, right. I was amazed at the sweetie pie coddling coverage of these people from major American media outlets. Does that concern you? Because the image that the people at home are getting is, oh, these Iranian people are very reasonable. It's Trump who's the warmongering crazy man.
Look, the elite media, or the elite in the media, not everybody in that media is thinking that way, have a planet of their own. We discussed this, classroom, media, etc. They think that Iran is a normal, liberal republic. That is not the case. So we have to bridge the problem of information that the American public is receiving.
Very good. Walid Phares, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. We will stay in touch in the days